My god, this video has been the nightmare of my day today. I've recorded this video 3 times today, maybe even more. So yeah, let's hope fourth time's a charm, fingers crossed. So yeah, here we go, fourth time recording this video today. Let's see. Quarantine 2 Terminal. So I watched this movie for the first time this afternoon, and I just want to state I'm not the biggest fan of the 2008 first movie, Quarantine. Like, I don't think this is a bad movie by any means. I'm not saying it's a bad movie. I'm just saying this movie isn't for me. I've seen this movie a handful of times over the years, and just it's never really clicked with me. I've never really had the urge to go back and re-watch it. I think there is a decent amount to enjoy in the first movie. I think the acting, is really good in it. I think the story that it's presenting to, I think it blends itself really well to the found footage, camera style. I think there's some really tense moments throughout the movie. I think it has, for the most part, an engaging enough story. I think the final 15 to 20 minutes of the movie has some great tension as well as some terrifying imagery in it. And the ending, the climax, is by far my favourite part of the first Quarantine movie. But yeah, I've seen it a couple times. It's never really resonated with me, as a horror fan nor as a film fan. I still I find moments to enjoy in the first movie, but it's not a movie I would really go out of my way to watch again. I own it on DVD, so obviously, I will watch it again. It's a movie I can maybe watch once a year under the right circumstances, but yeah. And I know the first Quarantine has a big following. It has a big cult following. I know there's a lot of people that enjoy the first Quarantine, and I have friends that are close to me that have said, Dove, I enjoy the first Quarantine movie. And if you enjoy the first Quarantine movie, I'm glad you can enjoy it. We like what we like. But for me personally, upon my past few viewings of Quarantine, I haven't been able to enjoy it. The movie's never really clicked with me. And another thing as well, I'm not a found footage hater. I enjoy found footage movies. Some of my favourite movies are found footage based. I really enjoyed the Paranormal Activity movies. And I will even go as far to say I enjoy the first Blair Witch Project. And I recently rewatched that. And while that movie doesn't hold up as well as it used to for me, it doesn't have as much rewatchability to it as it used to. I think it's still a really well made and competent horror film. So yeah, I'm not a found footage hater, and I know that's a very controversial topic in the horror community. But yeah, no, I'm not one of the people that hate found footage just because it's found footage. In the horror community, you either like found footage or you don't like found footage. And usually, horror fans are pretty, they're pretty, they agree on a lot of things. But yeah, found footage is where it's split for the horror community. But yeah, no, I'm not a hater of found footage. It's just Quarantine. It's never really clicked with me. So maybe if I watch it again, maybe I'll find something. I'll be like, holy shit, Quarantine is my favorite, found footage horror movie. But I don't see that happening anytime soon. So yeah. So anyways, let's jump right into Quarantine 2 Terminal. So this was a movie I was actually looking forward to watching. For a few reasons, actually. For one, judging from this front cover, because I didn't look at the trailers for this one, so I didn't know what it was about besides being a sequel to the first movie. But you're looking at looking at the front cover of Quarantine 2, it looks like it takes place on an airplane, which I think that's a very, very interesting story direction for the sequel. I think it makes for a very confined and claustrophobic, story. And I think it would make for a very tense and suspenseful, horror film. So I think Quarantine 2 Terminal, I think it had a lot of promise, living up to the Quarantine name, and just judging from, the front cover of the film. And so I'll watch it this afternoon. So what did I think of Quarantine 2 Terminal? Do I think this is a much better film than the first? Did it surprise me? Yes and yes. This film I think is much better than the first film, for a couple of reasons. I think the biggest difference you will see when you watch this movie is when you click on this movie and you watch, like the first minute of it, you will see that this movie definitely has a lot more money behind it. It's shot more professionally. This time around, the first movie was found footage. The second movie is more professionally shot than the first film. And I think that's where a lot of my enjoyment and a lot of my entertainment factor came from this sequel. Is this movie being very ballsy and like actually taking risk and kind of changing it up? Because I know like the film footage I think worked really well in the first movie, and I think changing up this time around, it definitely does make for a more entertaining movie. For me at least. I know some people might disagree on that, but for me personally, upon my viewing experience, it definitely added a layer of entertainment to this movie for me, and I really liked how they changed it up. I think it's a really nice layer for it, because this is what a sequel should do. Is it should take risk. It shouldn't be like it shouldn't try and be a copycat of what made the first movie great. Like what a sequel should do is it should take the story of the first one and and bring it over to a sequel and expand more on the story, characters, lore, backstory. It should expand on all those things that I just listed. And I think Quarantine 2, I think some of that is here. So Quarantine 2 Terminal, this takes place about, I think, 4 hours after the first Quarantine, where that movie left off, and there's a passenger that was in Los Angeles that does have this virus, and the virus is now being transferred through animals, and that's kind of how this outbreak starts on the plane. Is but one of the passengers gets bit, and then the virus slowly takes over his body. Which, speaking of that, the first act of this movie, I really enjoyed the setup to this movie actually, because I think the first act, I think, has a lot of great red herrings, with people coughing, like there's germs in the air, it's being spreaded from person to person. Like I really liked the way all of that was directed in the first act of this movie, and I think it made for a great suspenseful first act to the film. Where the first act falls for me, where this movie falls for me, is the characters. This movie has very minimal, if not none, character development. There is no sense of character throughout Quarantine 2, which, for a movie that has only a small group of characters, this movie should have some human moments, have some character moments, to develop on who these characters are, what their job is, who they are, their lives. We should have moments throughout it, and I think the first act, really missed out on that. Even when shit does go down in the second and third act, there's moments there where characters are panicking, where I understand that the tension is very high in the second and third act, but I just feel like there's a few moments I kept on seeing where where characterization could have been where characterization was important, to be implanted here. as a human moment, and I feel like it would have made like that sequence so much better. But yeah, so yeah, aside from characterization, um, I don't think the acting is as good in this one as it was in the first. Um, I think everyone in Content 2 does a pretty on par job, I would say. Like, nobody's great, nobody really, like, amazed me when I was watching this. Everybody's just pretty, like, all right. They're all okay. They give decent enough performances from what's asked of them, like, as performers. I think the first movie had definitely more realistic performances that fitted that scenario and that worked really well for that screenplay. Um, but in this movie, I just don't feel like the actors really, really try. I understand that all the actors here like are no-name actors, and while I haven't really recognized any of these actors from any past, movies or TV shows that I've seen. Um, and yeah, so the where this movie succeeded for me is, I think, not only in the camera direction that they took with this sequel, but also in the story. I think for the most part, this sequel does a pretty good job at expanding on the events that that were tacked on in the first movie. And I think there is some nice story development here. Um, and yeah, like that, there's a cool twist at the end, I guess, that like that kind of ties into the first movie, like really well. And I like how this time around the virus has gone airborne. It's spreading more worldwide, especially the way Content 2 leaves off, where this virus could be taking like a worldwide outbreak, which, if they ever made a Content 3, I would actually be interested in seeing that, because the way this movie ends, while it's very subtle, it leaves open for a great next movie, actually, and, well, even better, like a great set of next movies. Like, this movie could turn into like an entire franchise. I think so. Um, and I think this movie, while the tension isn't as good in this one either, unfortunately, as it was in the first movie, I think there's still some great tension moments in here, and I really like the idea of them being on a plane for the first half of the movie. Which, that's another disappointing element of this movie, is I was actually looking forward to seeing this story take place in a one location in an aeroplane. It's a very claustrophobic, a very confined space. I was looking for it. I think that could make for a very tense story, as I said. And they're only in the plane for the first half an hour of the movie, and then they get to this airport, and it's basically the first movie all over again, just with a new cast and some new story beats added, or some new story beats tacked onto it. I feel like this story would have been better if it was on the plane, because I feel like that would have made for just a much more like intense movie, instead of being a copycat of the first movie. And speaking of the airport setting, while I think there is some good tension at this location, there's this there's a lot of character decisions in here where I was just like, what the fuck? Like, seriously, what are you doing? And that hates me to say, because that's actually something that was actually better in the first movie than in this movie. And it might sound like I'm hating on Content 2, but if I'm being honest, I really did enjoy this movie a lot more than the first. Like, I would much rather watch this movie over the first. Even though this film, it has elements that aren't as good in this one, as it were in the first. I'm trying to think out what else I can say. Like, there's a few sequences that actually take place in vents, which made for a very tense, sequence, in the movie actually. And I think this movie also has cheaper effects. While Quarantine, I think, was made on what was, I think it was like a $2 million budget or something. It was a very small, very small budget. Quarantine 2, while there is more money thrown at this movie, it does feel more. It feels smaller while bigger, and that probably makes no sense. But it feels bigger in a way where there's a bigger location, there's bigger spaces, a much bigger story, development here, and then it feels smaller in the way where it doesn't feel like it has that production value that the first movie had. And I feel like the production value here and the production design, I think it's pretty good. Just feels like there's less care in that than what was in the first movie. Because the first movie there was more locations in the first one where the soldiers would go into the rooms and all of that. And there was that more dirtier and grimier feel to the first one. And while that's not here in the second movie either, it felt smaller. It felt smaller in that way. But yeah, I think, yeah, really, at the end of the day, I think this is a movie that I had fun watching, and I enjoyed the story direction. I enjoyed this new take on the cinematography, which I thought was definitely a step up from the first movie. And they actually took a risk, and whether people like it or hate it is up to you guys. But I thought it worked extremely well in Quarantine 2 Terminal. I think the direction here by, who's this directed by? John G. Pogue. I definitely fucked up his last name there. But yeah, I thought he did a really good job, at directing this movie. And this is a straight to video on demand movie, so obviously you wouldn't have the best effects. Yeah, in the third act in particular, there's some effects in the movie that that don't look great at all. And the first movie, I don't think had that many effects. It was more practical, and in this movie it's more visual effect and special effect wise. But I did like the virus creatures in this movie. I don't know what the virus patients. I don't know what the proper term to actually call them in this movie. But yeah, I really enjoyed them actually. Because you could when they actually had the virus on them, you could see their veins, and they were frothing at the mouth. And I think the design of them looks really good actually. So yeah. But anyways, yeah, guys, I really enjoyed Quarantine 2 Terminal. If you guys have seen Quarantine 2 Terminal, let me know down in the comments. What did you think of it? Did you like it? Did you think it was bad? Or did you really not like this movie? Let me know your thoughts and comments down in the comment section down below. So anyways, guys, hope you have a good rest of your day, evening or night, wherever you are, and I'll see you in the next video. Alright, bye.